Hey everyone, Julia Barbaro here, host of the Julia and Gino Podcast. I'm here with Gino Barbaro, co-founder of Jake and Gino, my husband and co-host.
You're looking at me as you're saying it. You expected me to say something. This is going to be an amazing show.
I thought you were going to get angry at me for some reason
yet.
if I messed up.
Give us a few minutes. Give us a few minutes. We may get a little angry. Let me hold up the book today because Dr. Mort Orman, he's on the show today. I'm going to read his bio, but the book is phenomenal. Maybe we're going to get a little into Chris Rock's story of anger. I love that. It was actually a rather, I don't want to say an easy read, but an easy to understand read. The chapters were broken down where you can consume them at your pace. I loved it, and I was getting a little therapy before the call, and we're going to dive into my anger.
You need a lot of therapy. I think we should have Dr. Mort after.
It's always about me, baby. Yes, I won't even use my hands in this podcast.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
so
okay, sure.
I'll try not to. Today's guest is an internal medicine physician and 40-year anger and stress elimination expert whose workshops have been utilized by entrepreneurs, the clergy, and even the FBI. Wow, good luck with that one. Dr. Mort Orman is the creator of the 10-session Angry No More program and has written 23 books on how to do so without drugs, relaxation exercises, or other traditional management techniques. Please welcome Dr. Mort to the show. How are we doing this morning, Dr. Mort?
Fine. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Excellent. I don't even know where to start. So for me, right in the book, you said that you use the word BS a lot. Anger arises from a foundation of BS. Let's just dive right into that. What do you mean by that?
Well, we have a lot of misunderstandings about anger in our society, even among experts. And people have been. We talk a lot about disinformation, political disinformation. Well, there's a lot of disinformation about anger that's floating around that we bought into, and that's what I try to correct in the book. To try to give people a more accurate understanding of what anger is. And one of the misconceptions we have is about where our anger comes from. So we think it's like a 1-2, like a direct cause effect 1-2 situation. So we see something, somebody treats us badly, somebody, gives us an order or criticizes us or lies to us or, something that was very visible. Everybody can see. And we feel the anger immediately. And it looks like 1 caused 2. And that's our common sense understanding. And that's the understanding I had when I was in my 20s and 30s and had lots of anger as a young man, a young physician that I couldn't do anything about. I couldn't control it because I thought it was a 1-2 process. It wasn't until many years later when I realized there's actually 4 steps in the process of something causing you to get angry. And the one is there, the same one, but then there's steps 2 and 3 in the middle, and then 4 is the anger. And we don't see steps 2 and 3, they're invisible because they're happening in our brain, they're happening inside us automatically, very quickly. Mm-hmm. And so I was missing those puzzle pieces. And consequently, I couldn't do much about my anger. Once I figured out what those puzzle pieces were and I understood the whole mechanism of anger, the 4-step mechanism of anger, not the 2-step myth about anger, then I was finally able to take control of my anger situations because I now knew where they were coming from inside me.
Do you remember the specific story or argument you had or anger episode that you had that you dawned upon you and said, time out, it's not 1-2, it's 1, 2, 3, 4?
Well, no, it wasn't a specific. I had lots of anger incidents when I was younger, so it was a whole bundle of them. Okay, and nothing that I tried to help me worked. I tried traditional anger management stuff, deep breathing, counting to 10, stress management stuff, relaxation, meditation, all that kind of stuff. It maybe helped a little bit, but every day I woke up, I was the same angry guy. Nothing changed, which is interesting because it was like Groundhog's Day, and that's my birthday is February 2nd. So I knew a little bit about that pattern, but I could feel it. Every day I woke up, I was the same angry guy, and then I went into personal development work because none of the stuff had helped me, and spent a couple of years doing that, and it was slowly over a number of years where I accumulated some insights that I was lacking about human emotions and human beings and everything. Finally, it all kind of came together in a way that I could put together a little system for myself that I could use, that I write about in the book, to really help me understand the internal causes of my anger very simply. So I know every time I got angry, I know, okay, I'm thinking this way, and this way, or I'm perceiving in these 3 ways. And that really helped me a lot. And then once I saw how much it helped me and how much anger I was able to let go of that had been constant before, then I said, as a physician, I said to myself, I got to get this out there. This is really this is something for people's health and well-being. They've got to, get a better handle on their own anger, and I can help them do it now. So that's what I've been doing for the last 40 years, culminating in the book that I just wrote and released recently.
I'm trying to picture Dr. Mort doing yoga and going, please release the anger.
I tried all that stuff.
Our yoga people, some of the most angry. They're just suppressing the anger.
Some are very mellow.
Good,
I want to know the number 2 and number 3 that you were missing this whole time. I'm curious.
Yes. Well, we have to understand that we don't see reality as it actually happens. There's just too much information that's coming into our brains, and our brains can't handle it all. Okay, so our brains kind of chunk it down and simplify it, and have been doing so for millions of years. Okay, that's how the human brain works. So we're never seeing real reality. We're seeing a condensed version of it that our brains are condensing, and we're not even aware that's happening. Okay, so we're getting these views through these filters that we've developed. Some have some genetic component to them and have been passed on hereditarily, but others, as we grow up and go through life, we get various filters through which we see things we're sensitive to, things we like, we don't like, all that kind of stuff. And then there's social filters that, by living in societies, they get kind of ingrained in us. So, what I didn't realize, what anger is always caused by looking through three main filters. And the three filters are: somebody did something bad and wrong they shouldn't have done. So notice we don't get angry if we see something and we think it's wonderful or terrific or fantastic. We have some negative judgment about what was done. There's some second filter is some hurt or harm or negative impact occurred either to us or somebody else. So there's a negative impact. And then the third filter is that the person who did the wrong thing was unilaterally or primarily responsible or to blame. So we have this very narrow blinders on where we're only looking at that person's actions, and we're not seeing any other things that might have caused them to behave that way or to cause the situation to go that way. And so we have a very narrow, restricted view. So we have these three filters. That's the number 2 in the 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, are the filters. And then the third thing, which is also invisible, is that not only are we filtering reality, but our brain is sitting there and telling us that what's coming through that the brain is filtering, or the brain is doing the filtering, and then it's telling us everything coming through that filter is absolutely true. It just stamps it with truth. And this is all happening invisibly inside of us. So we don't see it, we don't feel it. But our brain is filtering things. It's chopping things off, leaving things out, sometimes distorting things, okay? And then it's telling us there's no distortion going on. There's nothing left out. This is all truth. What you're seeing is the way it actually is. And those two things together, when you have stuff coming, those three things come through your filter, those ways of looking, and you believe they're true, which is your brain is convincing you to do, then that stimulates the chemicals, the hormones, the neurotransmitters, all the physiology that results in the emotion of anger. And other emotions, by the way, function in a similar way. So anxiety functions exactly the same way. It just has different filters. The three filters are different. Sadness has different filters. But what's coming through the filters we believe are true, and then we have the feeling. If you believe life is hopeless and you're terrible and there's no future for you, you're going to feel sad. It doesn't mean that what's coming through those filters is true, about you or about life. But it's just, if you believe it, then you're going to have the emotion that goes along with that belief. Okay.
I wrote this down from the book. I love this quote. You wrote, accepting we may be wrong about things, even when we're convinced of the righteousness, is a fundamental aspect of human growth and maturity. I guess that's what you went through early on, figuring out that it's not... I'm here to grow. I'm here to learn. And maybe all my filters, maybe what I'm really perceiving is not 100% truth, correct?
Well, that's what I didn't know. In my 20s and 30s, despite all my education, all my training, 7 years of medical training, I even did some additional psychology training beyond that. Despite all that training, I did not know that most of the time I was angry, I was wrong about something. I had misperceived something, or I had jumped to a conclusion, or I was missing some pieces of the puzzle that my filters didn't include. I didn't know that. I thought I was right. And by the way, one of the things, the emotion of anger, when you get the emotion of anger, it makes you feel like you're right. You're justified.
Yes. Yes.
It's like they call it righteous anger, because you think that what's coming through your filters is absolute God truth, and a lot of times it's not. So for me, the big breakthrough for me was being willing to admit and realize that a lot of times when I was angry, I was actually wrong about whatever it is I was looking at. Okay. And one of the big barriers for me is that I had been trained as a physician. So what's the worst thing in the world you can do as a physician? Is be wrong, right?
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm doing well. I'm practicing doing well as a physician, functioning well in that role, being right most of the time as best I can. Okay. And then when I go home in my personal life and I'm dealing with my emotions and my anxiety and my relationships and all that kind of stuff, I'm wrong all over the place, but I don't know it. And I can't let myself explore it because that would be being wrong. And what's the worst? I've been trained for 7 years to never be wrong. So I was like blocked. The door that I needed to open to figure out what the heck was really going on and make the corrections I needed to correct, I was blocked from because the ethos as a doctor is don't be wrong. That's the worst thing you can do. Just it's like the worst thing in the world you can do. So you don't come near it. You don't approach it. But that's really the secret to getting rid of anger. If you're willing to admit that when you're angry, the way you're looking at things could be wrong, and then you start looking to see where it might be wrong, and you will discover that there's a lot of times when that happens.
I love
just
that
have
my
to
wife
say
is
something
laughing.
because I have said this before, but by far this is my favorite podcast because it's the ego, right? It's the ego.
It will give you ammunition.
I might be a little with an ego here. Just because I'm Italian, I'm a guy. Women have egos too.
All that means is you're going to be wrong a lot.
Yes, I think what you said. It's one of those things where a lot of people suffer with anger, and I'm with you, doctor. Thank you for exposing it. But a lot of the times, it's just I'm just talking in general here. I don't want to be wrong, so therefore I'm mad. Does that make sense? What do you think about that?
I'm going to let the doctor describe what you're talking about.
But on your end, if you're getting if you're receiving anger from him, from your husband, okay. Yeah. He doesn't realize that the way he's looking
until
at things.
Now. This is it.
He's still not going to realize it after now because it's automatic. It's automatic. Okay. His brain's going to tell him the same thing. He's going to tell him he's right. He's not going to realize in the moment that he's angry that he's not seeing things accurately. Okay. You, on the other hand, you know what's true about you. Mm-hmm. You know that the way what he's judging you, what he's accusing you of, and what wrongdoing he's accusing you of, and what hurt and harm he's accusing you of, and how he's holding you 100% responsible. You know, there's a lot of caca in that. Okay, he doesn't because he's tied up in the emotion, and the emotion has him kind of, stuck with the reality that he's got going at the moment. But you know immediately the pieces that aren't true. Okay, you could literally help fill in the gaps for him if he would let you do that. Okay. Mm-hmm. A lot of times when we're angry, we don't let people do that, but we don't want people to do that. But that would really help if you have two people or a couple and they serve that beneficial purpose for each other. When one gets angry at the other one, if they allow the other person to help correct their misperceptions or misunderstandings, it would go great if we actually did that.
So the 90-second rule is important here. The 90-second rule is really important for people to understand. Can you describe that, please?
Yeah, that was something discovered by a Harvard researcher a number of years ago. Basically, when you study the physiology of emotions, and anger being one of them, there's those chemical reactions that you can measure and the secretion of hormones and things. And if you measure it, if you cause people to be angry in a laboratory and you measure the hormone cycles, they start to go up and then they peak and then they come back down to normal. And they studied a bunch of people and they found that timeline it takes about 90 seconds for the emotion to get triggered and to reach its peak and the hormones to reach its peak and the chemicals reach and then go back to normal. And what their principle from that was that most of the time that's not how we experience anger. It lasts a lot longer than 90 seconds for us because we're doing things mentally, psychologically, and behaviorally that keeps it going, or that keeps ratcheting it up. Okay. So we keep, telling ourselves we're right. We keep, focusing on what we don't like about that the other person did and how bad it was and how wrong it was and how much we were hurt and harmed and how much they were responsible. We keep doing and running that cycle in our brain. It just keeps the emotion going way beyond 90 seconds. So what they're saying, their conclusion from that study was any emotion that lasts more than 90 seconds, something's wrong. We're doing what we shouldn't be doing. To keep it going because its natural lifespan is just 90 seconds and it'll go back to normal. I remember when Tiger Woods was being interviewed one time about how he controlled his emotions so well on the golf course. And he said his father taught him how to do it. And he said his father told him very on as a young boy, he said, you can have any emotion you want on the golf course. Feel it, have it, as long as you don't let it last more than 8 seconds.
Wow.
After 8 seconds, you have to let it go and move on. And he took that to heart. And he embodied that, and you can do it. Okay, it's not easy, but you can train yourself to do that. And that was his strategy for dealing with emotions. Feel them, let them be there, gone. Okay, I'm moving on to the next shot. Okay,
Wow.
and that's much less than the 90-second rule, but he got a little bit of time to get to the next shot and do what he needs to do. So the faster he could do it, the better he'll perform as a professional golfer. So that was his goal.
Mhm.
But it just goes to show you that we do a lot to keep our emotions going when they don't need to.
I've got a bunch of
Go
questions. So,
ahead.
I mean, the next
Yeah.
one for me was really interesting in the story that I think it was 7 years that you didn't speak to your parents, correct?
That's right.
And I want people to hear this, that if they're struggling with family members, that they don't want to speak to family members, and looking back at that, what helped you overcome that? It was probably a lot of BS you were telling yourself about your mom just wanted to be a great mom, and you
And I didn't
realize
realize
that,
at the time I was angry with her. I didn't realize it was BS. Okay, I thought it was
yes.
true. Okay, so as a teenager growing, my parents were great parents. I mean, they didn't have a lot of anger. I didn't grow up in a lot of anger. The anger I generate when I started going to college or be a teenager at home, but basically, so I was growing up, I was maturing, and my mother, my father was pretty cool with it. My mother kept treating me like I was 5 years old. All the things she did when I was young, giving me a lot of unsolicited advice, trying to force food on me all the time at the dinner table, whether I was hungry or not. That was just her thing. Okay. But after I became a teenager, I wanted it to stop because it made me feel like a kid, and I wanted to be feeling like an adult. And every time I was around her and she did it, it really triggered me. And she's not acknowledging, my growth. She's not acknowledging my independence, that I'm becoming an adult. And I felt like she was really holding me down and producing all this emotional. And I would fight with her and I would argue with her to get her to stop. She'd end up crying and I'd end up feeling frustrated. And it would just happen over and over and over and over. And eventually I got, when I went to college, got away for a while. So it was only when I came back home in the summers. And then when I went to medical school, I got my own apartment. So, okay, I was away from it most. But if I ever went back home for a family dinner or get together or something, I mean, like I was just walking in the house, my stomach would start turning, into knots because I knew she was going to do the same stuff again, which she did. And it would drive me up a wall. And then one day I was in my second year of residency. So I'm taking care of patients in the hospital. I happened to be home that day. I had a little cold. So I didn't want to go into the hospital. And she called and she hears a little, congestion. And she starts giving me advice on how to take care of my cold. And I'm looking at this phone like I'm talking to a Martian. I said, does she not know that I'm an MD? I'm taking care of patients and critically ill patients in the hospital. And she's giving me, advice on how to take care of, and I blew up at that moment. I just said, that's it. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. I don't want to talk to you ever again. I want you out of my life for good. And I hung up the phone, and I was convinced that was the right decision for me. And then my father called a couple minutes later. What the hell did you do to your mother? She's all upset. I said, Dad, it's nothing to do with you. I love you. I'm happy to have a relationship with you, but I just can't have mom. I just can't be around mom anymore. She just drives me crazy. And he said, well, I'm sorry, son, but if you don't want to talk to her, then you're not going to talk to me because we're a package deal. And so I felt so strongly about not wanting to be around her that I said, okay, well, then I just won't talk to either one of you. And I continued to practice medicine and live in Baltimore. It was Baltimore where I was. I was only a couple miles away from my parents for 7 years. Didn't see them, didn't talk to them, didn't have any communication or contact with them.
Wow.
That's how angry I was. Okay. And then I again, I was doing this personal development work. I was starting to get some insights into things. And towards the tail end of the 7 year period, it started to dawn on me how much BS I had bought into over my lifetime, or my short lifetime, and how some of this anger that I had toward my mother was coming actually from my own judgments about her and my own misunderstandings about how the world worked and how mothers work. I literally thought I could stop my mother from being a mother. That was my goal. When I looked at it later on. I said, that's like the stupidest thing in the world you could ever take on as a project. But I did it for years and failed. It never occurred to me that it was a dumb project to even engage in at all. Okay, but that's what I had done. And then when I started to see this stuff, I started, really, this is more on me than it is on her. And then I finally realized, and then I called them up and I said, I want to schedule a time to come over and talk to you. I want to apologize. I've figured out some stuff. And then I went over, and they were very, very gracious. They never really stopped loving me, which made it a lot easier. And I just owned up to everything that everything I'd done, with all mistakes I made, apologized. I really felt, I knew I put him through a lot, but I felt I had to do it. But anyhow, so, and I talk about it in the book, is that, again, as like an example of when you come to realize, however you do, and in this case, I didn't have the benefit of like a book or a strategy or a methodology. I had to kind of like fumble my way through it on my own, and it took 7 years to get there. Okay? But I finally came to the point where I realized, my anger was was from BS. And once I acknowledged that, I knew I had to clean this up. It was like, it wasn't their fault; it was more my fault. And then we had a wonderful relationship from that point forward. My father lived to 80 and died, and my mother lived to 94.
Wow.
And continued to have a good relationship from that point on. And she still did the same things. She didn't stop, but they didn't trigger me like they used to, because I saw them differently. I didn't see them as, she's committing this crime against me or my adulthood or whatever. No, she's just being a mom. She's just doing her mom thing. And that's her way of saying, I love you. I want to do something nice for you. And like, who can get angry when somebody's saying, I love you, I want to do something?
Well, I think your story is very common, and which I love that you told it. It was so simple and so common, and that's I think a lot of people are frustrated with, just like you said, their parents or whoever, just because of who they are. Your mom. When you were telling that story, I was laughing in my head, because that's what I do. I mean, we have 6 children. 3 of them are adults, and I still text them. I'm like, "Did you eat? What'd you have for lunch
Did you bring
today?"
water in the car? It's like they're going to the desert. It's 2 hours without water.
Yeah,
It's like...
It used to drive them crazy, just like you said. But over the years, I've realized that I could just be like, "Hey, does it bother you that I ask you that?" And then we all laugh about it. They're like, "No, Mom, it used to bother me, but I'm okay now." And I'm like, "All right."
Yeah, because they matured, because they realized it was nothing to be upset about. And the triggering was coming from some BS viewpoint they had of it. That it was negative in some way. And
exactly. But I love that you mentioned that story, because it reminds me of when we do get mad, it's usually a one-sided. We never ever take ourselves out of ourselves for a second and look at the other person and say, what's their intention here? Like, let me see even like when they do things that drive us crazy, I wonder what they went through in life for them to constantly act like that. It does help with the anger.
Yes.
But what happens?
And that's part of the filter. The filters kind of leave that out. That's the blind spots. We may assume we know their motive.
Right.
We may assume a bad motive or not such a great motive. And the truth is, we don't really know their motive or don't understand it correctly. Yeah. They may have a completely different motivation. If we ever bothered to ask them,
thank you.
We would find out. But we're usually so convinced that we're correct.
Well, it's our ego. Like, again, it's our ego. Well, we know what your intention was. We know what you were thinking. We know why you did it. But we don't want to ask, because then we don't want to be wrong. So if we're wrong, then we got to change. I've been mad at my husband many times, and he actually never did anything. I thought he did certain things. I thought he said or not said things. And then but I was still angry. So I'm like, all right, I guess I have to figure this one out. Yeah.
Well, I have a whole chapter towards the tail end of the book called about the value of being wrong.
Yes.
And when you understand how human beings work, how our brain, we are designed biologically to be wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It's just you can't avoid it. It's just the way the brain has to. All this filtering stuff makes you wrong, but your brain has to filter, or it can't process everything that's coming through. So we're always wrong a lot of the time, and we don't realize it. But once you get past that ego thing where you feel uncomfortable, you start to see that it's actually a great thing. Mm-hmm. Because it's a way to get to be more right. So we still want to be right. We're not going to let go of that. Okay. Just now you discover that one of the best ways to be right is to admit that I realize I was wrong about stuff. Then I see what I'm wrong about. Then I see what's a better way to look at it. And now all of a sudden I'm wiser.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have happened had I not admitted I was wrong about whatever I initially believed or thought. Yeah. And I was willing to do that and go through that. Now I get to the other side, and it's better on the other side, because now I've got these new insights and new perspectives that are even better. Now those might turn out to be wrong later on, and then I'll have to come up with even better ones. But that gradual process of being open, at least being open, to say, hey, I could be wrong about this. I think it, I feel it, but you know what? It might not be true. Let me see if I can figure out what's really true. And lo and behold, boom, you're in a whole new, better, place of understanding what's really going on.
Yeah, it's important to find out truth. And I think sometimes you're not going to find out the full, because, like if there's an issue with another person, you'll never truly understand what what they're feeling, what they're going through, even if they explain it. But just I feel like I love this conversation because I'm not looking at you I'm just looking in your direction, Gino. Okay.
I can feel it, Doctor. I can feel like the judgment.
No,
I can feel like I'm doing something wrong right now. And I'm just waiting for the anger to come.
No, this is such an important topic because I think so many people struggle with anger. They don't know what to do. They believe anything, everything they want to believe. And what is that quote that I always say? A lie is as powerful as a truth if you believe it.
Yeah.
Because we could pretend, yes, I know the truth, and I'm just going to live with this, and I'm angry at you. But what do you? I want to know, even with family, when someone's wronged you for years and years, and you've just put up with it over and over again for years, and just trying to be the better person, I'll just give them another chance because you want to have family connections and all of that, but then your children notice that you're allowing people to mistreat you and just get away with it for years and years. And then finally you're like, forget it, no more.
Yeah.
And then everyone's angry at you.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things going on there. Firstly, it's a mistake in the first part to let, if you're upset about something, somebody's treating you badly, to let it slide. And to make excuses for it and to say, oh, well, I'm doing it for this reason. It's if you can do it in a way that won't blow up the relationship, it's always better to try and address it and try to curtail it if possible. But suppose you have gone through that and you did make the decision early on to swallow it and just, take it. And what happens sometimes is anger will sometimes get us to the point, as it builds up over time, get us to the point where, okay, I'm going to do something about it. And then you come out and you express what you've been feeling for a long time. And now you look like this really angry person,
yes,
which you are, but it's actually good. It's a good form of anger in that it's mobilizing you to speak up for yourself and to stop a situation that's harmful for the relationship, harmful for you as an individual. It's harmful for the other person as an individual because it's damaging the relationship. So it's good anger in the sense that it's motivating you to deal with a problem that you haven't been willing to deal with up till now. And sometimes the way we deal with it is to get the anger flowing, to get us moving, to get us addressing it. And then a lot of times that'll send ripples out there that affect other people because up till now you've been the quiet, mousy, accepting person. And now all of a sudden you're this little mini volcano that's like, where's this coming from? And they don't understand the whole process. They don't understand the years and years of putting up with it, and then the finally having enough, and then the finally having the courage to go attack it and try and address it. They don't understand what's really going on, which sometimes you may have to clue them into. But it's a normal reaction when you change fundamentally how you've been being in a relationship with people. They're going to notice it, and they may get angry with you because now they see you doing something wrong. Mom shouldn't be angry. That's not right. I'm being negatively impacted because mom's making me feel uncomfortable. And who's responsible for mom being angry now? Well, mom. She's the one doing it, They don't see that somebody's been mistreating mom for all these years and she's been putting up with it when she shouldn't have, but she was, out of the kindness of her heart and trying to save the relationship and everything. They don't see any of that stuff. That's all, their filters leave all that out. Okay. But so they're going to have a natural, from their filters, they're going to see you doing something wrong. They're going to see them being negatively impacted, and they're going to see you being 100% responsible to blame, no other factors involved. And they're going to be sitting in their wrongness. And that's where their anger is coming from. Same three filters. Okay. And it's helpful to know that, by the way, because if they're angry, you know what they're wrong about. You know how they're looking at you now, the same three filters.
Yeah.
So so that may enable you to enter into some conversations with them to help enlighten them as to about what your real motivations are, why you chose to do this, what's been building up over years, so that they can understand it better and have, fill in some of the gaps in their filters. So it doesn't always work out perfectly because people aren't always receptive and open to hearing the truth and hearing somebody explain their truth. So it's not like definitely, it's going to work when you try it. You have to try some things based on what you know and the information you have and see if you can make it work out. A lot of times you can.
Yeah, I like that.
Dr. Mort, can you go over the example you have in the book with Chris Rock and Will Smith, just for people to have an understanding of how that was a cool little analogy you used.
Well, I mean, you can take anything, any instance. What I'm trying to show people is it doesn't matter what it is. And I did when I work with people one-on-one on coaching. In my first session, I say, give me pick 5 things out of your life you ever got angry about for any reason. I have no idea what they're going to pick. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, you remember the old Karnak thing with Johnny Carson? The old Karnak bit?
Yeah, yeah.
I do a Karnak bit with them. Okay, I say pick any 5 things in your life that ever made you angry, and okay, write them down, and then I work. Okay, tell me the first one, and they tell me, and I said, and I show them it fits these 3 filters, and they go, oh, and then give me the second one. It fits these 3 filters. Oh, give me the third one. 5 for 5 every time.
Mhm.
I told them to write down 100. It would be 100 for 100. Okay. So you can take any example of you see somebody being angry. That was a very public one where Will Smith and Chris Rock had that incident at the Academy Awards or whatever the award show was. And obviously Will Smith got angry enough to get up and go do what he did. So what provoked, he obviously saw Chris Rock's behavior through the same 3 filters.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Rock did something bad, wrong he shouldn't have done. He told a joke in public about Will Smith's wife that Will didn't appreciate. He thought it was a demeaning joke or something like that. Will felt negatively impacted. He felt that like his wife was negatively impacted. This is on national television. He's embarrassed. Chris Rock is embarrassing him and his wife. Okay. So he's got the negative impact. And then who's responsible for deciding to tell the joke? Chris Rock.
Uh-huh.
And you got those 3 filters. You believe their 3 filters are true. You get up out of your seat, and your urge is to punch him or to slap him or whatever. Good thing he slapped him and didn't punch him, but his urge was to express his anger, and keep Chris Rock from doing that kind of thing again in the future. So, but that's where his anger came from. Those 3 filters.
So if he had been Tiger Woods, it would have been okay if he'd have waited for 8 seconds and then said, let me just cool off. And it's a stimulus and a response. I think as you get older, the maturity level's there. You can start.
And he might have had to have had a private conversation with Chris Rock, to clear the air and let him know how he was feeling and whatever. But, and I don't, who's to say that what he did was wrong, but he certainly made a point. He certainly, prevented Chris Rock from doing that kind of thing in the future or reduced the chances he would do it. So it wasn't a great demonstration of role model, behavior for young people, how to behave.
Mm-hmm.
And again, even then, that could be a good thing is that we're having these conversations where we can say, no, that's not the way to do it. It's to recognize he did not consider that he had any BS in his 3 filters. Which he never did, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't consider there were other ways, non-physical ways of expressing his anger and having a discussion with Chris to work it out. So those are better things.
Doctor, I have a question. So a lot of times I hear, especially with raising children, it's like you're trying to avoid the kids by getting angry. And I like how you mentioned sometimes you have a good anger because then you're going to actually do something. And so I do think some parents and just some people in general just try to avoid being angry all the time. And it just builds up, kind of like what I did in the sense of just trying to always, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. But it's building up. And so talk about that, like the benefits of getting angry.
Well, I like to talk about the anger that I am trying to get people to get rid of. I call it unwanted anger.
Mm-hmm.
Distinguish it from the kind we're talking about that could have beneficial effects. When it motivates you to stand up for yourself, or when raising kids, sometimes you want to use anger to impress, a point, like don't run in the street without looking, for cars and stuff like that. So anger may be appropriate. You've seen coaches, use anger to inspire their team to function better, perform better. So there's lots of ways that anger can be used beneficially. It's the negative kind, though. It's the unwanted anger, the kind that damages our relationships and stuff like that. And sometimes we're afraid of our anger towards our kids because once we let it out, we don't really know how to control it. And we don't have this 3-filter model to understand it. So it's going to get out of control most likely. And then the kids are going to feel terrified, and then we're going to be teaching them how to be angry, not how to not be angry. So there's some wisdom behind sometimes that reluctance to get demonstrably angry at our kids. But if we understood anger better and we could let it out, and then we'd have a way of talking to our kids about it, explaining, oh, by the way, I got angry because I looked at the situation this way, and now I see that it wasn't quite correct. At the time I didn't see it. That would be very useful for a kid to have a parent model for them, the deeper understanding of anger.
Yeah.
And so, but when we don't have that background, then it's just, if we let it out, it's just going to go wild usually because,
Yeah. Well, it's not a class in school how to deal with your anger and how to control it. And so I think that's something important that, I mean, it's put on
tell
parents.
me a class in school that's pretty useful for everyday living. There is no class in school. Algebra? Yeah, I use
my
algebra.
point
well,
is,
they may teach you how to, once you get angry, how to not express it in harmful ways. But it still isn't I'm dealing with the issue on the front side.
Yeah.
How do we stop you from getting angry? So you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about, do I express it? Do I not express it? Is it
Right.
going to damage this? Because then you can lessen it yourself inside.
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Dr. Mort, as we wrap up, can you let the listeners know where they can find out more about either 10-session Angry No More program? Okay, if you want to talk a little bit about that, of how you've helped hundreds, thousands of people to go through the program, and where can people buy the book as well?
Yeah. So I've been doing this for 40 years, and I finally, in the last couple of years, was able to boil it down to 10 1-hour Zoom sessions, like we're doing here. Okay. Like 10 1-hour Zoom sessions. I can take people who've been angry all their lives and nothing's helped, and I can teach them all this stuff in 10 1-hour sessions. And at the end of it, they're like different people. They're just not getting triggered as much. They know where their anger is coming from. They understand the 3 filters. They know what to do with that knowledge. How to make their anger ratchet down whenever they need to. But I'm really, there's only a limited number of people that I can help one-on-one in those kind of programs. So I decided I was going to take everything that I teach, put it in a book, so that more people can have access to it, and they don't have to depend on having me work with them one-on-one to do that. So literally, I put everything I teach, nothing held back. The only thing I couldn't put in the book were, like we're saying, individual examples. Hey, this happened, and then we can work through the principles. But I give you the principles, and I show you how to work through any situation with them. But I can't do that one-on-one, strategic, individualized kind of thing. But anyhow, everything's there. The blueprint's there. So you literally can pick up the book and not have to go through the 10-session program. You'll get all the training. You'll get all the resources, all the tools, and the know-how to do it. It's just a matter of whether you go out and do it or not, and practice it or not. So that's what people can do. And there's a simple way they can get in touch with me and also get information about that. I have a handout, a PDF handout called The Best Anger Elimination Method You Can Find. And all you have to do is go to theangersolution.org, theangersolution.org. And you get a little handout. You'll get on my mailing list, but you'll get a handout, talks a little bit more about anger, talks about my 10-session program, also talks a little bit about the book at the end, shows you how you can get it, shows you how you can communicate with me. And that's really the best thing if people want to be in touch with me, get that handout and hopefully get the book and read it. And then if they decide at the end that they want to have some additional coaching, I'm happy to talk to them about that. But hopefully they won't need that.
Dr. Mort, my wife said that this was her favorite podcast, so I usually wrap up the podcast.
Well, I want to say one
but I'm
thing
going to let her wrap up the podcast.
I just want to say one thing. I have this great idea. I have a good idea that, yes,
I'm going to get angry now because it's just, Gino, work less, but I got these great ideas. That means Gino's working more.
I feel like we should have a whole family coaching session on this book, right? Whole family coaching
I've got
session.
one even more. I think Dr. Mort should go out there and start certifying people to do his 10-hour program. So
I've already done that. If you see in the book, there's 5 people that I write about that I have come to for training, and I did awesome. Basically teach them my methodology and give them the go ahead and use it in their work. And I'd like to do more of that. I'm also trying to get it into schools.
Yeah.
So I'm approaching. I'm about to have a conversation today with somebody who's big into homeschooling. To see
homeschoolers,
places that want to try this, pilot this as sort of an extra thing in their curriculum beyond the traditional stuff that they're covering, that kind of life mastery skill, stuff like that.
Yes, we should have a discussion afterwards because we homeschool the kids and we have a lot of homeschool families here in Florida as well. That could absolutely
I think the benefit is, you can do it at school, whatever, but having a whole family do it together, I think will, oh my gosh, that is incredible, because how to deal with siblings and parents and to avoid what you went through, doctor, with your mom for 7 years.
Yeah, I'd be happy if you want to experiment with something like that. I'd be
absolutely,
happy.
Absolutely.
And if you guys have an anger issue that comes up in your daily life and you can't get through it, and you want to call me up, and I'm happy to give you a free coaching session.
As I said, my favorite podcast of all time.
Dr. Mort, thank you.
I'm joking. Let's be honest. Sorry, my husband, whatever. But I love his Italianness. Let's just say that.
I'm passionate. I'm a passionate Italian. So, for Dr. Mort, going to college and growing up as a teenager, being frustrated by his mom, being frustrated that I want to become an adult, and I think developing the anger and going through college and then becoming a physician who is never wrong, who never has time to reflect. I'm always right. I can't be wrong. If somebody's wrong, then if I'm wrong, then they die. That's what ends up happening. And then at one point, mom just breaks my chops so much. And I'm like, Mom, I'm out. Dad, I love you. Dad says, nope, we're a package, me and your mom. If you don't talk to her, you don't talk to me. For 7 years, they're literally down the street from each other. And if anybody listening to this is living that kind of resentment, you don't want to live that kind of resentment, because one day you're going to look back and go, I lost out, and it was probably because of my BS. Anger equals BS. Dr. Mort, after 40 years, he's been developing this whole entire program, 10-step. First step for you listening to this is to buy the book. The second step is to read the book. And the third step is to implement the book. And the fourth step is possibly to get on a call with Dr. Mort and possibly go through the 10 steps or find somebody who does the program. But you need to hold yourself accountable. And you need to understand that if you're saying to yourself, I'm that angry, I don't need the book, you're probably one of those people who's got their filters a little hazy, as they would say.
A lot of times what will happen is people tell me that, so I don't really get angry. And what they're saying is, I don't blow up, I don't do road rage, I don't punch holes in walls. But if I say to them, well, do you ever get irritated? Do you ever get annoyed? The little things ever really, bother you? Oh yeah, that happens all the time. those little kinds of anger can sometimes over time be just as damaging as the big blow up kind of anger. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't want to be known as an angry person, so therefore you're going to avoid the word anger.
That's your filter right there. I'm not an angry person, right? Exactly. Dr. Mort, thank you very much for being on the show. We appreciate it.
This has been one of my most fun interviews. So great.
Thank you, and take care. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.